Welcome to Marriage with Joy, which is the most open discussion on the internet about the positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant aspects of living in harmony with matrimony. Marriage with Joy unabashedly discusses the most interesting questions raised by listeners. Our informed and informative panel addresses issues with thought, wit, and aplomb. Voted Best of the Web 2 years running. Good day, beautiful, bountiful, beloved, immortal beings, and good-looking people. You're good-looking because you're always looking for and finding the good. You found good in abundance because you conscientiously tuned into Marriage with Joy with your humble host, Barry Shore, the ambassador of joy. Notice I didn't say the ambassador of joy, the ambassador of joy, and wonderful, amazing Dr. Diane Medved, the apostle of living in harmony in matrimony, and author, podcaster, raconteur, wonderful, amazing wife, mother, and grandmother. And
so complimentary, Barry.
You can hear me now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
But I was going to go on with more accolades, but
I'm embarrassed, but thank you. Thank you.
All right, so here's what we're going to do today. Our two other panelists, wonderful Maura Sweeney and loving Lori McDermott, are not available at the moment. So what Diane and I are going to do is we are going to wax eloquent, and we're going to go double duty and speak. So today's discussion is a carryover from last month. Now, you may remember, those of you who follow us and can't wait for another episode. Last month, we discussed some of the potential issues of why people are either delaying or not getting married, and unfortunately also delaying or not having children. And some things came up in last month's discussion, and I want to bring it out into the forefront right away to discuss it, because it deeply disturbed me so much. I've really been thinking about it almost a month. One of the issues is finance, money. And the other was the ability or the inability for people to make commitment. So I want to make a little bit of a statement. I'll do a soliloquy with your permission, Diane, just to begin. My wonderful wife, Naomi, and I are this is 49th year of marriage. Now, that's a long time. Yeah, actually, I mentioned that to somebody the other day, and who he's married 37 years. We were having a business discussion, and I've asked him, you married how long? He said 37 years. And he was very happy, and I was happy for him. And I said, I'm 49. And he went, wow, that doesn't happen in today's world. The other part of it, I feel like I got married before I was bar mitzvah. I feel like because I don't feel 7'7" chronologically, because I'm not. I'm 48 metabolic because I swim, and I'm 28 mental acuity, and my SOW is 8, which is sense of wonder. So the point of being married to the same woman for 49 years, okay, that's something. Yes, as you said, applause. Part of what I want to mention is that the obvious, let's state two obvious. One of them is, I believe that there has been a societal shift over the past half century vis-a-vis marriage and other fundamental institutions. Okay, you don't have to be a genius to say that. I want to bring it out because it touched me deeply from last month. The other thing is that finances also have changed deeply, I believe, in the past half century. What existed for my wife and I when we got married, and we got married in a faith community, in the same faith community that Diane and Michael got married in, is that faith in our abilities to work together, commitment, a bond for marriage, transcended other ideas, especially idea of, well, how do you make a living? What do you do? Et cetera, et cetera. Of course, they were crucial. Well, I take it back. They weren't crucial. They were important, they weren't crucial. What was crucial for us, my wife and I, was that we were living together, building a family based on values that we both had in common and wanted to instill, in God willing, a family that we would have and live in harmony with people, again, in our faith community and others. So finances were secondary. I must say that I have really been thinking about this, I said, the past month, and even before the past month, that I think finances today take on a far more important or larger role in people's marriage ideas and prospects than they did when I got married half a century ago. And I don't have to be a genius to say this, I think it's much more difficult today. Okay. I'm going to make a statement because, again, Diane and I live in a particular faith community. In our world, if you make $100,000 a year as an income, whether it's one or two people, you're poor. I mean, and when I say that, and I don't mean it jokingly, that is a very difficult statement to make $100,000, six figures, and to be poor in the sense that, okay, you're not walking around in rags, you're barely making ends. They don't meet. No, that's the funny thing about ends, right? Can't make ends meet. They don't meet. Because if you, again, in a faith community, by the way, it doesn't have to be Jewish, it's Mormon, it's devout Protestants, Catholics. I mean, people who live in faith communities have more, how should we say it, commitments of their time and money, primarily school tuitions, certain abilities to help others with charity because we tithe and such. There's lots of pressures, and it's not easy at all to make enough income to make sure that everybody is clothed and going to school and doing what needs to be done. And let's even say it, go on a vacation. I mean, these are real issues. Can you imagine? I'm going to stop in just a moment because I want Diane to comment on all this and have her opportunity to speak out at length. I was with my assistant the other day, and this is a man who's been with us now 21 years. He, from the day I got out of the hospital, which was January 13th, 2005, this particular man, his name is Steven Senfuka, comes from Uganda. He's been with us 21 years. Actually, we're starting his 22nd year. Now, that doesn't happen in the normal course of events. Most of the time, when there's a caregiver, the person dies because he usually takes care of older people. Well, I was only 55 at the time. And he's almost my age. He's 70. I'm 77, and he's been with us. So I was showing him the other day what it costs to go to Universal Studios or Disneyland. If you want to go for one day, a family of four, husband, wife, two kids, to go to Disneyland for a day, it's plus minus $1,000.
Oh my.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you recoiled. Thank you. Well, just the admission is
one day.
One day. The admission for one day is $136 per person. Parking, buying food. I mean, just the realities of stuff. And I mentioned to Stephen, because he doesn't know, he can't understand what the world was like. When Walt Disney began Disneyland, it was built on a principle. The principle was, where can families go that they pay one relatively small admission price, and they don't have to worry about buying this, and ride all day and just enjoy themselves. That was the foundation of Disneyland. Okay, so there's been a tectonic shift in finances in the United States. There's been, in my opinion, a tectonic shift in people's commitments to each other, the idea of creating bond that says we're here forever, for as long as we want to be together forever. That's our mindset. Our mindset is, we'll try this out for a couple of years. It works great. If it doesn't, okay, fine. We did our best. That's a different way of doing things. we don't enter into holy matrimony with that mindset. So I wanted to say, half a century into this process called marriage with joy, because that's what it is. Getting married, okay, that's relatively simple. It's an event. Okay, it's a nice event. It's a wedding. It's vacation and such. And then, you settle in and, okay, now it's the day to day. And I want to say these words because I want to avoid them. They even say this about life, a daily grind. The only daily grind that you want to be aware of is what Diane does for Michael, making coffee. That's the only daily grind that's available. Life is not a grind. Marriage is not a grind. It's the ability to even think that it's another level of life, another plane of existence, and that it is a joy-filled existence. That brings out a whole different process. Now, by the way, does that mean that it always is like that? Well, yes, except that it takes work. And work or dedication, caring, built on a fundamental, and that fundamental is what we call life relationships, human relationships. If one, whether it be the man or the woman, doesn't understand how to have a good relationship with another human being, it's rare that your marriage is going to be great. You have to be a student of human relationships. And the best place to practice that, and therefore being able to use that in the wider world, is in this remarkably wondrous, God-given opportunity called marriage. So as that is an introduction, I'd like you to comment on that in any way you want to, Diane, and speak out, because you're married now decades. And
41 years.
Sorry?
41 years. You were at our wedding.
You're in the front. Yeah, I know. I was there. That's another thing. I was there at Diane and Michael's marriage. So I have some standing of what I'm talking about.
No.
So I'd like you to comment on these two ideas of, first of all, the idea of bond and what that means, trust, promise, and finances. And do you see, because you now have your daughter who just got married a little while ago, do you see that things have shifted much in the past 40 plus years?
Absolutely.
What do you see?
Well, I mean, as you're talking, so many things come to mind. Michael's producer for a show, Jeremy. We've lived here in the Northwest 30 years, and he was there from day one. He was Michael's producer 30 years now, and he remains Michael's daily show producer to this day. Our other two employees, his associate producer, joined the staff when he got out of college about 25 years ago. And our assistant Carmen, who is the best of all possible worlds, also about that length of time, has been with us getting married with 2 kids. And I would have to take over when she took maternity leave, which was, I can tell you how hard her job is. So we have this long-term relationship situation with 3 people. And it was not expected in the old days that there would be anything different. We watched the other night, Michael and I visited our daughter, Sarah, and her new husband in Philadelphia and just got back. And one of the things we did was one evening we watched an old movie called The Shop Around the Corner. And what is that about? Well, it was about every corner had a shop around the corner where you could buy leather goods and gifts for people and luggage and things like that. It's about such a store. And all the employees in that store had the expectation that they would be permanent employees. And to be hired would be, you form a bond, you have a relationship, you call each other Mr. or Ms., Miss in those days. And it was actually a movie from 1940, and amazing to see that the change since then and how we view our work, especially lately in tech, where people can be hired to these high-level positions at Microsoft, speaking of the Northwest, and Meta and Google and all these places. And then all of a sudden one day you come in and you read on your email, sorry, we have to trim, we have to get more efficient, and so we have to let go 10% of the staff, and you happen to be in that list. People have no job security, and therefore they do not form bonds. If they do not have practice forming bonds in the workplace, imagine how hard it is to form a bond for life in marriage. And I think we have a short-term view that all the media, looking at TikTok videos, what is that? A minute or two, and you see these people and they present themselves and they're an image. And they're an influence, and they're an influencer. And what do they influence us to do? See things in little chunks, including our marriages, our relationships, our friendships, our association, our beliefs. Our beliefs. It used to be that to be a Democrat or a Republican meant that you had a set of core values. Now those values are being violated right and left, and I mean right and left. And because of that, there is no security in anything. And to protect yourself, to protect your future, to protect your finances, to protect your feelings in particular, and I'm a psychologist, that is, to me, the main thing. People withdraw and don't fully invest. They don't fully commit. They don't say, this is a lifetime relationship. Our son has had a job in high tech at a firm for 10 years. That is really rare, but he has coworkers who were let go lately, and there is no protection in life. Okay, so that overlaps two things, commitment and finances. And I think it's really necessary nowadays for couples to have enough money to live, to have both ends meet, as you said, Barry, to have both partners working. You can't do it on one income. But I will say, in the old days when I got married, when you got married, it was that if one person's income couldn't do it, then you lowered your standard of living. It didn't mean the other person had to necessarily get a job unless it was beyond a certain threshold. You lowered your, okay, so if you lived in a really nice place, you moved to a place with one fewer bedroom, or you moved to a different neighborhood, or you stopped eating out at restaurants, or you cut back. Now people, they're so committed to the weirdest things instead of being committed to each other and to marriage and to faith communities and things. They're committed to pay every month for all these TV subscriptions. Disney Plus, you turn on a TV in a hotel because we don't have a TV at home, and you see all these different things. Each one requires a separate subscription. What does that mean? You can't make it on one income because you have so many separate subscriptions to everything in the world. And are they necessary? Are they necessary? We used to believe it was honorable to go down a notch in your standard of living rather than to go into debt. But now we don't have honorable. We have, what's the best deal? What's the best deal for me? I'll drop you and go there. And if that deal runs out, I'm going to come back here and try them again because they may have a different deal. There is no allegiance. There is no commitment that you can count on. Because you can't count on it, that keeps people away from marriage. The other thing that I think I mentioned last month in that regard is that so many people have been burned by their parents' divorces. And it hurts them so much that they worry that that could happen to them. As a child, you may not know what's going on between your parents. And then all of a sudden you see your home is torn apart. Where's mom? Where's dad? Where are they? You can't count on it. What does that mean? It means you're hurt. And that means you put up a guard and you don't want to get involved again. So people are feeling they have to be set, they have to be comfortable. There's nobody to rely on except yourself. Once you get that in place, then you can think about marriage. Then you can think about children, maybe. But before that, what can you count on? You got to go through school, you got to get a job or two, or skills, or a degree of some sort that you can reapply when you get fired at the first place. And only then by the time you've already got your values and got your car and got your condo and got all that stuff in place, then you can think about adding a relationship. And I think the big difference is for us, Barry, the relationship was primary.
Yes.
And I mean, I'll tell you in my case, I was so bowled over by Michael Medved. I mean, I was just in awe of him. He was so smart. I've said this before, his sexiest organ is his brain. And it really, really caught me. And I was willing to do anything for him, including make coffee every morning, because I adored him. It was just, wow, how did he ever choose me? Oh, I was just over the moon. I remain over the moon because he's so loving and so attentive and so wonderful. And if you can establish a relationship with those qualities at the core, then you can overcome a lot of other things, including getting poor, losing a job, having to move, having a kid move across the country and you want to follow them. Anything you can bear if you have the bedrock of your marriage. And that's the trouble now. People don't consider their marriage bedrock. And I think that's what we have to work on.
So let's. I'm going to make a leap into faith for that. When you mentioned bedrock, I write a newsletter every week, and I've been writing about AI, and you can't have any show. We're going to talk about AI in just a moment, without mentioning AI. And so I've been writing about the Flintstones and the Jetsons. And the Flintstones live in bedrock. You don't remember because you never watched it.
I do.
Okay.
The modern Stone Age family.
So, yes, you have waxed eloquent, and it's really important. You mentioned several pieces that I want to make everybody aware of. One is allegiance. We don't do a Pledge of Allegiance anymore. Matter of fact, to do a riff on that. So in schools, when I was growing up, and again, this is not to say it was better then or now. Leave that aside. It was a different process. We had something called the Pledge of Allegiance. The idea that one would pledge allegiance to a flag, okay, fine, to a country, great. But what I'm saying is the ability to pledge allegiance, at least even as a kid. I don't care if you're 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. What does that word mean, allegiance? When the words, okay, you begin to think about it and you recognize that it has the C word, commitment. Okay, what does that mean? So in school, you're talking about that. Now, still, we talked about sports and kids, and boys talked about girls, etc. In today's environment, there is a much more, how should we say it, revised agenda of what's happening in schools. And schools are very disparate. So, for instance, in a faith community, most of the time, the parents will be sending their children to a faith-oriented school. If you go to the general public school, oftentimes you have no idea what they're teaching. And then when you do find out what they're teaching, it may not be in alignment with your values. And that is really difficult when you want to raise caring, committed young people who will eventually grow into older people. So let's talk about also in terms of finances and such and work, because work is a very important part of anybody's world. What you do oftentimes reflects of who you are. So you have doctor, lawyer, Indian chief. Okay, I choose to be an Indian chief. What does that mean? I want to be this, et cetera, et cetera. And you work towards it. Oftentimes it takes a lot of work to become that which is your model. Again, whether it's a doctor, or a lawyer, a plumber, or electrician, especially in today's environment, you better be really good if you're going to be a plumber or an electrician. In the world of AI, which is the ultimate in a shifting work environment. So in my world, when I talk about AI stands for always improving. That's my understanding of AI. I will tell you something to the world, and we're talking to thousands and thousands of people right now. I would not want to be in school right now. I don't want to be a kid again. I would not want to be entering into the workforce again. It's it, I can understand why people feel unease, they feel threatened. They certainly don't feel like, well, this is a place I could really give my all to, because my all will be as long as I have a place here. Okay, I'm always going to be looking around for something else because I know that the people who employ me are always looking around also for, well, what's better for the company. I'm going to break in with something, and I'd like you to speak about it as well because you mentioned something really important. There is a great guy. His name is Simon Sinek, Sinek, and he has one of the most viewed, what do they call those? TEDx talks. I think it's over 35 million views. It might be 45 million or 50 million. One of the most viewed. And he did it, oh gosh, 20 years ago, even almost. Um, he talks about begin with your why. And lately, over the past 8, 9, 10 years, he's been speaking about businesses that try to balance their books and find difficulty, getting out of situations. Like you said, we have to trim the workforce. Okay, why? Oh, we need to save money. We need to be more efficient. Usually it's because you want to save more money, make more money. And he says when you have a company that sees workers as the most expendable part of their business, you're working with the wrong company. Because if you as a business owner see the people that work for you as, well, if things don't go well, cut that one, it's just a salary. He says that is absolutely the most awful part of what we call capitalism. Because you mentioned you have 3 people that work with you as part of the team, the Medved team.
Mhm.
They're not just people that do things for the Medved team and you pay them. They're integral. And again, if you have a company of 50 people, 100 people, 100,000, when you begin to look at employees as expendable, you're taking away the heart of an organization. Again, I understand that sometimes it's necessary. Okay, I can hear it. It should be rare because it goes to what you were talking about, Dan. Somebody's working for a company for 10 years, doing very well, maybe a senior vice president, making, pick a number, $400,000 a year, and established at making that kind of money, and that's how your lifestyle is. And now you're laid off. And by the way, go find another job, a position. Oh, yeah? This is real stuff. And it's common in our world today. That's why you mentioned the movie. It was less common 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And with AI, who even begins to know what really is going to be happening in the place that we call the workforce? I certainly don't know. As I said, I would not want to be going to school right now. I wouldn't want to be a Jew on campus, identifiable or otherwise. I wouldn't want to be in the workforce. Now, I want to say one more thing I want to ask you to speak. I have been very fortunate in my life. I've been unemployable since I'm about 13 or 14 years of age. What does that mean? I'm an entrepreneur. I find it difficult to work for a company for something. So I've been very blessed. The only time I ever actually had a job with a company, it worked out very well because I was a senior vice president at a company, and it was during that time of my employment at that company that I became paralyzed, and I had all kinds of insurance I wouldn't have had otherwise. And Thank God, the good Lord's always taking care of me. However, I will say it if unless you have an entrepreneurial mindset, which means that things are always moving. If you're in a mindset of, well, I don't mind being an employee, high level, but you're expendable. What does that do for the mindset? What does that do for your family? How does that how does that create a feeling of comfort that you want to be able to live well, which means at peace? Okay, so I'm off my soapbox box, and I bring it back to you, Dr. Diane.
Well, that's the trouble. Don't we live in the age of anxiety? Dr. Haidt says that children are filled with anxiety. I mean, that was never applied to children when we were young. There was no such thing as kids going to therapists. It wasn't that kids were all healthy, but it was that the mindset was that childhood is a time of innocence and play and fun, and there shouldn't be things that stress kids. And now there are, starting with their parents' relationship, which may or may not be stable. But I think that's the trouble, is that we are told and we are shown from the earliest ages that things cannot be counted on. That not only parents can't, their parents' jobs can't, where they live, not. What can a child learn is stable forever? I mean, you try and teach them that God is there, but how can a child even fathom what God is? I can't fathom what God is, who God is. I mean, I'm supposed to love him with all my heart, but it's very hard because you can't grasp onto that. So what is there left in our culture? Especially, you mentioned AI. We were driving along today on the street, and we were behind a truck coming from a residential neighborhood, and it was a painting company, and it struck me, and I said, there's one job that you can't farm out to AI, painting your rooms. So people are now going to start looking toward careers where they can be in charge. They say that people who are successful in tech are now, or coming out of college now in tech, instead of going into working for a company, as you mentioned, they're buying up companies of this type that paint houses, that do real estate, that do physical labor. That's what the high-level techies are now going to do, because everything else can be done by AI. It's really mind-boggling what AI is capable of, what it may be doing. We may not need doctors because the AI can start analyzing all your problems and your history with everything to do and what all the medicines can do to each other, and much more efficiently than a human can.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, the problem with medical care, gripe a little bit, is that each kind of doctor stays in his or her own lane. And one type of doctor doesn't talk to another type of doctor. And so they're not coordinated. But with AI, we'll be able to have better health care, and they'll be able to come up with many new kinds of medicines and cures and strategies for people. But then what does that do for all the people in healthcare? And it just reteaches that same lesson. Nothing can be counted upon. Nothing is sure. Nothing is long-term. Okay, so what are we to do? Here's my recommendation, is make your marriage all the more central to your life. Pay more attention to your spouse. Do more fun things with that person. Overcome whatever the hurdles are. And every couple has to learn how to mesh. But that's something that you can do. Learn how to mesh with your partner so that is the one thing you can count on in your life, and ideally that your children can count on in their lives. So they have that model, so they can learn that, yes, there are many things you can't really count on, but if you form a relationship based on giving, not taking, not what might happen next week, based on giving day to day with the confidence and the commitment that you will be giving and thereby receiving. But that's not the important thing. Giving every day of your life to this other person, then you don't have to worry so much about these extraneous things that certainly will be changing. But key is to make your relationship the project from which you venture out. And I talk in my book, Don't Divorce, about your marriage being a family project. It's a little special island in our nation, in our neighborhood, in our culture that you have control over, that you can build, you can correct, you can shape, you can veer toward this, that, or the other value that you note are worthwhile. And I think that we need to start doing that, noting what's worthwhile, because we get so many things thrown in our faces, like all the stuff on your phone. I look at Instagram to see my grandchildren, but I mean, I don't look at Facebook that often. I'm trying to minimize the impact of the screen and maximize awareness of my environment. And I'm kind of notorious because whenever I go anywhere, I'm always exclaiming. It's like, oh, isn't that amazing? Isn't that beautiful? I know I can get obnoxious that way.
Right. And they make fun of you for it, I hope.
but I acknowledge it.
Good.
Because I think it's worth talking about being observant and what you observe. If it's wonderful, if it's beautiful,
yes,
if you see life positively, that's what you should be doing. And if you can practice that with your spouse, if you can practice that with your children, then they learn it too. And they can appreciate life that you're sharing together, not just life that's within their own sphere around them, but what you're doing together. What is reality of the combination of you together? And so what really bugs me sometimes is to see teenagers standing there waiting for a bus or in front of a school or something, and they're all looking at their cell phones. Nobody's talking to anybody. Nobody's looking at each other. Nobody's even looking up to see if the bus got there. They're all just like glued to their screens. And part of it is because now schools are wising up and they're having kids just deposit their phones as they get into school. I live on an island, and in the school district on our island, they have something called the Yonder pouch, YONDR. And the kids, when they get to school, they have to lock their phones in the pouch, and only at the end of the day do they get the little machine that unlocks it. And that's the way that the school guarantees that they won't be distracted by screens. But now, and it's good, it's to their credit, parents are saying, but wait a minute, during the school day, the kids have these computers that are issued by the school. You're teaching them that way to value the screen.
Right.
So I think it's really important that we notice these things and that we decide, rather than letting these extraneous influences decide for us. We choose how we want to spend our brain cells, our eyes, what we're seeing, what we're discussing. Take control of your life. I think that's what's causing anxieties. People feel their lives are out of their control. And yet, with these small things that you do all the time, you can take control of your life and combat the influences that are malign in our environment.
So you began this discussion with the A word, anxiety, and you finished with anxiety. And then you mentioned in between Dr. Haidt. Now, his name is actually, he doesn't like being called Haidt.
Is he called Haidt?
Haidt, right. He
Haidt, sorry.
No, it's no.
H-A-I-G-H-T. I don't know.
Right.
I just read it.
It's spelled H-A-I-D-T, which normal people will pronounce hate, except he says, I don't like it because, first of all, it's not the right way my family pronounces it. And it also...
Okay, I apologize.
So there's two things that I just want to say on this, because I've been a fan of his now for about 3.5, almost 4 years. And the book has been out for about 3 years. I was a fan just before that. The book has made a remarkable difference for millions of people in America. And it's now gone worldwide. Part of it is that it took a couple of years, only a couple of years, for certain school districts, and now almost every, to recognize that he's correct. He and I'm sorry to say I'm blanking out on his co-author. It's a wonderful woman whose name escapes me at the moment. So please forgive me for that. They wrote it in tandem, and they both said that they're amazed that it actually did what it's doing, that it caught on. which is great. So you're right. Especially kids have more anxiety today than ever before. Kids were always anxious, except we didn't call it anxiety. We said, okay, kids are anxious. Big deal. Go outside and play, which is what parents always used to say to kids, go outside and play, which is what people don't do. Now, I'll tell you one little anecdote, however, and this was, I found very interesting because it goes directly to modeling family, creating an environment for each other in a marriage and children. It was the graduating class at NYU called New York University, for those of you who are watching around the world. NYU, which is a prestigious school in the United States of America. And fortunately, Dr. Haidt was asked to be the commencement speaker. And he spoke very nicely, I thought. I'm listening. Unfortunately, he was booed by many people in the class. But worse than that, it was voted upon by the student body that he should not be the commencement speaker. Now, thank God the faculty overruled and say he's our commencement speaker. However, the fact that student body didn't like it and they booed him, there's something bizarre going on. Okay, it's an interesting dilemma. Yes, why? It's another.
Why did they do that? I mean,
why? What was he?
To anybody?
What was he talking about? He was talking about commitment. He was talking about putting the phone down and looking. Here's what he said: looking in people's eyes. Mm-hmm. Looking in people's eyes. The ability to look into somebody else's eyes and somebody's face creates something that cannot be equaled in the human condition. Again, for me, I feel like a kid again. I am. When I look at my wife, especially if she smiles back at me, I tingle. I mean, that's why I open by saying I'm 49 years old. I tingle. I melt. I feel like I'm a 16-year-old kid. It's such a delight and such a pleasure. That only begins to happen when you are interacting with another human being. And for all of its glory, the phone or the communication device, whatever it is, that brings us a whole world, information overload sometimes. You cannot gain the same benefit. It's just not humanly possible because it's not human. Now, speaking about that, I'm going to share with you something a little bit disconcerting since you mentioned it. I have a friend who runs a fairly advanced robot company. And she told me that when it comes to things like painting houses or rooms and such, they have robots now that can do it and will continue to do. Yeah, nothing's safe, Diane.
Nothing's safe.
No. So, however, I say this to my son often, and I'm trying to begin to discuss with my grandsons who are 9 and 6 and can't understand what Papa's talking about. However, I'm planting my seeds, is that when you as a human being excel at something that Diane mentioned, which is the human interaction, there will always be a demand for you. Whether it's painting, being a doctor, there will always be need for medical practitioners. They may be doing it in a very different way. So I happen to be today, I went to my doctor. I haven't seen, this is my endocrinologist for my diabetes. I haven't seen her in 6 months. And about 2 months ago, we did a telehealth call, which I loved because I didn't have to wait for an hour to see her when I went today. I had to wait for an hour to see her for 15 minutes. Okay. And the next call we have is going to be a telehealth call. And I love this. This, I believe, is not just now. I mean, it's obvious that it's now. And it's going to get better and better because, as you said so eloquently, hello, by definition, AI is impersonal. It doesn't care. It only says, what can I do to help this being? oh, I'm going to look, something, I'm going to review all the literature about his information that I have on him or on her. And within a space of pick a number, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever the time is, it will bring out 3 alternatives that almost by definition will be as good or better than what a human practitioner could do. However, the genius of the human practitioner still, who knows what's going to be in 25 years, to be able to make a decision might be a better decision using all of the input than the AI does. That may not be the case in 25 years. Who knows? Maybe, certainly not in 50. However, robots are here, self-driving cars are here. It's what's the role of the human? And the greatest way to answer that question is to involve yourself in what Diane says so eloquently as the family project. Doesn't matter if it's 2 of you or my closest friend that I learn with every day has 11. He just got his 11th child. So he and his wife. Yeah. And I am, thank God, surrounded by a number of people that have very large families. I also have dear friends who don't have any children. So it's a difficult thing. But the family project, what a wonderful way to approach life and to see as every human interaction like that, because they're part of your family. It's a human being. And to begin to use marriage and what you learn by being married, the ability to work with each other like sandpaper and get better and better and better, it only makes other human relationships better, more fun, more enjoyable, more interesting. That you can be of benefit to another human being. Is there anything more beautiful in life? To be of help? So I want to make mention that you used another word, and that's the idea of choosing. And when I do in my books and when I do my webinars, I talk about the 6 most important words in life. And these are choice, not chance, determines your destiny. How you choose to respond in any given situation determines your path in life and your trajectory. We live in a world of shifting plate tectonics. You don't have to be a genius to know that. And what is today, in 10 years, will be radically different. 30 years from now, and I hope I'm alive to see it, and I wish that for you as well.
Nice.
We'll see it 30 years from now, be able to say, without feeling disquieted, more by, wow, that's really interesting. In other words, to be amazed by life, to feel that life is a great adventure, and to use the family project so that when you are in the great adventure, you don't feel like it's a tsunami trying to push you under, and you can learn how to surf. So we're going to finish up, and Diane, you have the last words.
Well, gee, I mean, you started off by asking why is it that people put off getting married? And I think people want to feel in control, and they don't feel that way when they have fear. And the thing that people used to do is take the leap, as they used to call it. You know, you have to have a leap of faith. You have to grab for that gold ring, whether or not you know it's the next one. And if you don't take that leap of faith and then be all in on it, then you're going to be stuck back wherever you were. And you're never going to have the richness of life. I mean, to have a partner is just like the most wonderful basic thing. And I understand there are people who can't find the right person. I understand that in some situations it goes bad for whatever reason. And I understand divorce is necessary in some cases. But at the same time, if you then are so burned that you're not willing to take another chance, then you're going to be stuck in the same spot. So if I can sort of conclude my answer to that question, why are people waiting? They're afraid. And they don't, and the commitment of being all in, of giving your whole heart. You know, when a mom has a baby, that's all in. There are very few moms who they are not, I mean, you would die for your child and you would give everything for your child. You would sacrifice everything for your child, but not necessarily for your spouse. So maybe you can compare those two in your mind and see whether or not they could ever be, no, they'll never be identical, but there certainly could be comparable in the amount of giving that you have. And really, in the end, kids grow up, they move away, they have their own lives, they choose what they're going to choose and likely not what you would choose for them. And so really, what do you really have to last a lifetime? Your marriage. That's what you have to take you through past when your children are gone, past when the challenges start to come. It gets you through, as I said, it's bedrock. It's like the basis from which you can venture out and take other chances. So if I can recommend, it's like, if you have a person who you feel pretty good about and checks the boxes in terms of values, the things that you hold dear, don't be afraid. Take a chance. Go for it. If that person loves you, all the better. And I feel very fortunate because I got the best of all. So but that's the way you should feel your whole life.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, those are remarkably positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant words to conclude this segment of Marriage with Joy. So I'm going to give a blessing from wonderful Diane and Barry, and that is go forth, live exuberantly, spread the seeds of joy, happiness, peace, and love. Go mad. Go make a difference. Diane, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Best wishes. Bye.
Bye.
Welcome to Marriage with Joy, which is the most open discussion on the internet about the positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant aspects of living in harmony with matrimony. Marriage with Joy unabashedly discusses the most interesting questions raised by listeners. Our informed and informative panel addresses issues with thought, wit, and aplomb. Voted best of the web 2 years running.